So, Jim Cosley. Jesus! All right, I got to get my own in there, you know. When I go to Teen Challenge and Pastor Paul's sharing on, there's a particular day that he comes, it's induction days, and it's always small room, it's chapel, and it's a day that where a lot of people are making some big decisions in their life. You know, they're making a decision to come into a program. They're making a decision for Jesus. It's heavy. It's really heavy, and I always find it extra special when Paul's given the word there because he connects so well with them, and it's a beautiful thing. So I know Teen Challenge loves you, Paul. Right. Well, me and my wife are excited to be here today. We're really blessed. It's my wife, Chris, up there. So Chris, stand up. Let's give Chris a hand. Hey, Chris. Can you believe it? She's been married to me almost 45 years. A saint. Yeah. This is my second time here. Well, not here, but the other location. And both times were tri-tip days and salsa days. So Paul knows how to get you here. Yes, he does. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it's always a pleasure to get up and share a little bit about your story, your testimony. I know I love the testimonies from the guys at Teen Challenge, and it's one of my favorite things. And when you guys do that, so I'm blessed by that. But so we all have a testimony, right? And it's one that it's of God, right? And what God's doing in our lives. And sometimes it can sound like us a little bit, like we're talking about ourselves, and that can be a little uncomfortable, but it's about Him, right? And so one of the things when you preparing for coming here and talk was it's a blessing because you're able to sit back and take a moment and look at your life and what God's done from a distance, right? We're always like, it's good to live in the day and the moment, one day at a time, they say, right? That's good. But it's good to, have a moment there where you can stand back and look back over a number of years and just see what God has done, all the connections, all the connectiveness and everything. It's just so beautiful to, do that. I should do it more, but, I'm like everyone else and busy, and I just don't do it enough. But, thinking about coming here gave me that time to do exactly that. I'd like to start off with prayer. Could we pray? Father God, thank you for this day, Lord. You brought every one of us here for a reason. You knew we were coming, and we all have a purpose here. Some maybe to share their testimonies, some here to listen, but you have a purpose here for each and every one of us here today, Lord, and so we thank you for bringing us here, and we just pray this in your name, Lord Jesus. How many of you have a day in your life that you really just don't look forward to it coming, right? It's one of those days where you just as soon pass. You maybe like sleep through or something. Just would rather not face it down. Many of you do, but I'm looking for a raise of hands or anything, but I know many of you do have that day, right? And so for me and my wife have that particular day. My family comes up on July 29th every year. And that's that would be 11 years since we lost our son to heroin. And it can be hard, as you start, getting through those days, and we all have them for whatever reasons, and it just can be a challenging time as you approach it. Even good, well-meaning people will sometimes, call you and say, "Oh, Jim, I know tomorrow's going to be hard on you." You're going, "Oh, thanks," and kind of talking you into that. But yeah, so we all have that day. So we had to face that day down. But thankfully, I'm not here to talk about that day, right? I'm here to talk about all those other days over the last 11 years and actually beyond that. But yeah, I'm really here to talk about where God has been in our life, gave us purpose, showered His love on us, gave us a plan, lifted us up from despair, and it's been quite a ride over the last 11 years for us. Romans 8:28. We all know that verse. It's one that's often said in church, and maybe it's one of my favorites. And we know in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who are called according to His purpose. That's the NIV version of that. 25 words, right? And so many of those words in those in that verse just really stick out. And even today, my wife and I were at church, and we were praying for someone who had lost a close friend in the family this weekend. Suicide was horrible, and we're praying for her. And that Romans 8:28 came in my mind. But you're just not going to drop that on someone that's suffering through that. But we know, right? Do we? Do we know? Because we struggle with that, and that's the reality of knowing. And in all things, right? All means all. I don't need to bring Webster's dictionary up. The meaning of all is all things, right? And He works good to those who love Him and been called according to His purpose. And so that verse became so real in my life, and because in going through this, in fact, me and my wife were talking as we're driving up here, and she was saying how she knew that so much on the day that my son had passed, right? And I wasn't as strong in my faith, and I did not know. In all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. But she did. And so that was good. The day after my son had passed away, I got a call from Pastor Ron Brown. And I don't know whether anyone know Pastor Ron? He's an amazing man of God. And I didn't know him at the time. And I didn't even know Teen Challenge at the time, right? One of the last words my wife said was to my son, go to Teen Challenge, they do interviews on Tuesday. Same interviews that Paul goes in and does at chapel. I get this call from him, and he introduces himself and prays with me, right? And pours God's love on me, right? In this phone call. This guy I don't know. And like I say, he's an amazing man of God, and he brings it, right? And so I finished that phone call with him, and I was really affected by it, just deeply. Just, wow, this guy called, and it kind of was the beginning of, as I kind of look back on it, where God began to shower His love and grace on us through this horrible time. The following day, I ended up over at Teen Challenge in San Juan Capistrano. They have an outreach. They had an outreach there. They still do, but at that time there were men living there, and there were they had apprentices and students and people there more. And I really can't even say what picked me up there. It was God. God drove me there because I was heading over there. My wife's saying, "What are you doing that for, Jim? You could go there later, right?" And I says, "No, I got to go there." And I ended up over at Teen Challenge. And there I was praying with 5 guys who were heroin addicts. They were praying for me. We were praying for each other, right? And in that I saw something. I saw hope. And the desperation of a father losing a son, God giving you this hope at that time was an amazing gift, just to be there with those men. And I was really blessed to be there. It was just, wow. A little while later, they asked me then, said, well, a guy who was headed it up down there in San Juan, a guy named Michael, asked me, he said, well, would you like to come over and say a word, talk about what your experience was to the kids in this organization called God's Gang? Oh, God's Gang? Okay, I guess, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do this thing. And so I went over there and to share a word. I've never done anything like that in my life. It was, kind of one of those out-of-body experiences, never really, going to talk to people about God, and never speaking about my son's passing in a, large group. And particularly to a room full of Hispanic teenagers, many of them in gangs and all of that, and I'm going, wow, it's like 100% that, and I'm going, wow, what are my qualifications to do that? And, as I was kind of thinking about it this week and thinking about it, well, I didn't have qualifications to do that. God does. God's qualified. So there I was in the midst of this, this is like a couple weeks later after that, and my son had passed, and Brian's his name. You guys love Brian. But God giving me a purpose. Right? Now, he showed me his love, and, and then the purpose part started to come there and then. Well, right after that, he said, well, hey, Jim, man, why don't you coming out with us? Why don't you mentor and, and come in and be part of God's Gang, be a volunteer there, give you something. Okay, that was kind of a big step, and, well, I'll go do it. And I think I said, well, I'll go try. At first, I don't think I said I'd jump right in. Yeah, I'll try. And, there it was, I was really new to knowing who God was and his love for me. And there I was being put into a role with kids there as a volunteer to be, sharing God's love, and many other things that it was like, okay, this is really stepping out now, in who I was at the time. And but at the same time, while I was there, it was cool because I got to come to know some of the apprentices there, the young men and women there, because there was a constant flow of people. They'll spend 3 months and then move on to Teen Challenge Ministry Institute or go back home or do whatever. But it was so I got to know a lot of the young men that were going through that program. And God really blessed me with that, because there was this broken, hurting dad who needed to love. They needed to show his love, God's love. And there he gave that to me. So I mean, the common theme in all of this isn't Jim. This is God just laying these things out one after another, right? I didn't qualify. I didn't ask. I was just, just like, come do this. God was laying these things in front of me one after another, right? And so getting to know these guys, it got to be this thing where I got to share this love, and it wasn't like, you lose a son, you still have love, you still want to share things with, people. And so there he was. I had that, through the young men. That wasn't why I was supposed to be there mentoring guys. I was probably even breaking the rules a little bit, but, that's who I am, rule breaker. But, yeah. So that kind of like ramped it up a little bit in my life, because God gave me this purpose in these people's lives that were struggling. And Lord knows I didn't do a very good job with my son, but there he was giving me other people's sons to mentor along. And so that went on for a number of years, and I had very close relationships with people, and some of them went on to just go on and do amazing things, and they still are. After a while, I was asked to come up to Teen Challenge for a little bit and help them do some fundraising. They had an event going on. It was a Jubilee event, and they needed someone that wasn't afraid to go in and talk to people, I guess. That was me. I talk too much. But yeah, so they had me going out calling on different pastors and churches, and I did that for a little bit. But while I was there, I again overstepped my bounds once again, and I was there, and I was getting to know the students there. I wasn't my role there. I wasn't brought there to be this guy who was helping these guys through a hard time in their life. But I did anyway. So. But while there, I met this young man. He wouldn't mind I've said his name. His name is Josiah. And Josiah had to go off and serve some time out in San Bernardino County system out there. And, and he left, he was gone, he was out there, and I said, wow, I should write him a letter. And I wrote him a letter, and he wrote me back, and then I exchanged a couple of letters, and then I should go visit him. Right? I went out to San Bernardino, figured out how to get in there and do the visiting, and got in there, and so we did that for a little while, while he was just having to do his time. And while I was there, he said, hey Jim, I got a celly. Can you do kind of what you're doing with me with my celly? Sure. A little. I don't know this guy, so there I was. Across the glass pretty quick from his celly, and cold calling him basically, and they're in San Bernardino jail, and then that multiplied to a couple more cellies of other people. And then those cellies had other cellies. Now this isn't me. I'm not going in looking for these. God's just, having them send me letters, and I'm getting letters out of nowhere, right? And then these guys start going upstate. Upstate's a jail way of saying you're going to prison, right? And big boy jail. And so then those guys went upstate, and they started referring me to other prisoners upstate, right? And it started growing, and after a while, I've been doing it, dawned on me I might be able to help them. And because there was, a new Teen Challenge, so it kind of was there, and it started there with helping people find their way to Teen Challenge. So then these people were coming out, and there's another couple of other places, Union Rescue Mission, and some other places where I grew connected with, and helping people find their way in the programs, and in lieu of going to prison, so the courts would allow them to go there versus serving some time. Wow, okay, and so that kept on moving forward, and but the most important part of going there And it, the meetings always began this way, is that for me to tell them, I'm here to let you know that Jesus loves you. He forgives you if you ask. He has a plan and purpose in your life. It's amazing. It seems like it's something, okay? But hardened guys, just breaking down and wanting it. And then it kind of, touched on a lot of different things, as we were meeting and God's plan and purpose in their life. And some of these guys who know me here is like me badgering them about surrender, right? You got to go all in, man. And that all part, and we know in all things, all in, 100%, not 99.9, 100%, and. And then, so that went on its way for a while, and then kind of the same thing happened in Orange County. The guy went there, and then that one really exploded. I thought San Bernardino was kind of wild, but in Orange County jail, it exploded in a way that, I just, again, not me, God just, For example, right now I have over 200 people there now that I've been able to go in and see and share these things. And, very small percentage of them will get the chance to get a program rather than go to jail. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's maybe 1 out of 20, 1 out of 25, something like that. So it's all those others there, that's, I'm there for a reason, right? And encouraging. And but during this time, I started doing the Orange County jail part. Then Pastor Tim Suck, he's not here today, I don't think. I don't see him, but he gave me the ability to officially be the jail coordinator. Now, mind you, I'm not the guy who knew anything about seeing people in jails, right? I know nothing about this thing, just go, share a little love and hope, and that was what I ended up doing. But at that time, Tim gave me the ability to be the jail coordinator with Teen Challenge, which was, they didn't do that too much at the time, I think, but there I was. Now I had kind of an official capacity to get in there and see him, and then God said, "Okay, well, now we're going to use this, and we're gonna blow this up some." And even those guys are going upstate, and so I got more and more in all the prisons and seeing people in prisons and all of that, and then the public defender's office, comes to know me, and then the public defender's office starts sending people in. You start talking to people in the legal profession there, and still not driven by me, and all God, and him just pulling this thing along. And then through it all, a lot of we ended up getting connected with families. So it was just not the inmates themselves. They would ask, can you call my mom and let her know I'm going to do this? And then, the whole thing. And then there's moms and wives and children, and kind of created a ministry there for Chris in many different ways, where she's helped out a lot with the families, and so it's. And then what was cool was with LA Teen Challenge. Yeah, that's the women's version of Teen Challenge, and even though I'm quirky, they gave me the opportunity to also go in and see the ladies there. So then all of a sudden, there I am in the women's jail. Now, okay, that's weird. Guys aren't supposed to be going in and talking to the women, but no, it worked. It worked in amazing ways. That there was something about going in and seeing the ladies there, that where someone going in that doesn't want something from them, just wants to give them hope and peace and an opportunity to see God. It's an amazing thing for them. And so it's like all these different things just kept on pouring in, and it still is, it's so amazing, when to tell people to surrender to God all in with all your heart. Of course, I had to do the same, right? And it's a daily challenge for me, like it is for all of you. But yeah, being all in, but God encourages us along the way in so many different ways. So I was telling one of the guys here today how encouraging it is just to see him here, just to see him, because when I saw him originally, it was through the glass, wearing an orange jumpsuit, and and then to see him here and raising his hands and praising the Lord. Amen. Right? Wow. That's something beautiful. God's miracles shown all along the way for me, and just recently, 2-3 weeks ago, and how God will have his purpose go and beyond what you can imagine. I was asked to go in and testify for a young man that was faced 25 to life, right? Long time, right? I met him prior to him going into jail, him and another guy. And they came to my house, and they were both heroin addicts, and we talked about God's hope versus the other road, which would be death, prison. They were in good agreement when we met that day, but they ended up going up at the hill and slamming heroin after we talked, right? And it wasn't long after that both of them found their way back into trouble. One, the guy who I was testifying for, fell asleep at the wheel after using heroin and then got in an accident and caused great bodily injury to someone, and he had strikes, so that's why he's looking at all this time. But it was kind of weird. So I went to the court to testify for this man because I come to know him. He referred people to me in jail, right? Lots of people, and people that this guy was evangelist inside jail. He had given his life to Christ, and so he just kept on introducing me people, and people going into the program and going all the way through the program. And one of the guys I was able to bring there into court that day was one of the guys, or actually both of the guys were people that he had introduced me to that had actually graduated from Teen Challenge. One was off in Teen Challenge, heading off the Teen Challenge Ministry Institute, and the other one was, moving ahead in life. And so the idea was, okay, we're going to go in there and we're going to testify, right? And so the DA puts me up on the stand, and it's like I was on the stand there for half an hour, right? And it was, as it turned out that day, we were the only three that were there to testify. They put off other things. They just had the three of us there to give our story. So there we were in court, and it turned out to be church in court, in Central Court there. We gave church there, and that's what the day turned out to be. We shared God's plan, God's purpose to a courtroom. We talked about prayer, we talked about God's love, mercy, all those things was talked about in the courtroom there. I was on the stand for a half hour. And it was like, but even every question the DA would toss out was set up by God, right? It was like, well, really, thank you. Okay, let me answer that one, and we were able to, and so it all worked really well. Now, the guy, he's going to get sentenced on August 3rd, but there's a lot of we're hearing some good things that he might be able to get into the Teen Challenge program rather than do 25 years to life, right? Praise God, right? So it's kind of like living in this thing and living through the hardest time of your life, right? And then watching God have purpose in it, is my testimony. And, I'm so thankful that God's decided to use me and my wife and my family in this way. We're blessed, really blessed by it. And we're thankful for, all He's done. And, So I thank you for listening today.